Hi everyone, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Victor and I'm a project manager at Block. And in today's webinar, we'll be diving into one of our recent major updates, the automatic booking charge routing. So, until now, as you know, handling complex billing for corporate groups or large events meant a lot of manual folio transfers and inevitably the common human error. We have now changed that. The new functionality allows you to set predefined rules that automatically determine who pays what. So by configuring those rules at the company or at the event level, you can effortlessly split charges between guests and agents, manage deferred payments, and ensure invoices are grouped perfectly every time. So whether it's a room rate, a city tax, or transferred items from the POS, the system now handles the where and the who, so you don't have to do it. Now, this automatic routing in question, keep in mind that it will be triggered on booking creation. So as soon as you create the booking, the router will do its thing and it will transfer the charges. So what's the agenda for today? Today we'll be looking into how to configure the charge router. After that, I will be showing you how to link a router to companies and events. And lastly, we'll be taking a look at a few common example routers. So first things first, I assume that you see my screen. Let's see how charge routers are configured. Now, in order to configure and manage your existing charge routers, you need to go to the main menu, to the navigation bar, then the settings menu, all settings. From here, you go to the booking section of the settings, and you open the new setting here called Booking Charge Routing. In here, you'll notice that I already have a few routers which I've predefined. Now, in order to create a new router, you need to click on the plus button first of all. And firstly, you need to give it a name. In here, it is advised to enter a clear and descriptive name that suggests the purpose of the router in question. So maybe you can type in which charges do you want to transfer and where do you want them to be transferred to. After that, you have to add the instructions of the router, essentially the rules of the routing. In here, with the Add Instructions button, you can add a lot of different instructions. We'll get into these details in a second. But for now, I'm just going to keep one single line. So in here, we have those following options. The first one is called rate charges. In this first option, essentially you have to select which charges will be a subject of transferring, of routing. And here you have three different options. Right now, the currently selected option is called all charges. If this option is selected, any charges which are currently present in the booking folio, doesn't matter their origin, are a subject of routing and will be transferred. Second choice you have here, if you click on the slider, like that, only rate charge. This is the second option. So if this option is selected, only the charges which are automatically charged from the rate, meaning room nights, city tax, package services, only whatever came from the rate selected in the booking is a subject of transferring. And the last option here is called non-rate charges. So any charges which you have manually charged in the folio or charges from the POS, for example, which were transferred from the POS, are a subject of transferring. Now, the next options here are some, let's call them filters. First of all, we have this filter by revenue group. So in here, if you only want to transfer charges which are in a certain revenue group, for example, I only want to transfer the extras. If I select extra, only charges in this revenue group are a subject of routing. So this filter allows you to do that. If nothing is selected, of course, charges from any revenue group will be transferred. And the last filter we have here is filter by charge tags. This filter will allow you to route specific services only. In such cases where you need to transfer specific services, you will need to type in the name of these services or charges that needs to be transferred. So for example, here, if I type in water, only services called water will be transferred. Nothing else will be transferred in this room. So delete that. And lastly, and very importantly, we have the destination. In this field, you have to select where do you want to transfer those particular charges. Now, if I click on the drop-down menu, you will see a lot of different options, a lot of flexible options. For a deeper dive of those choices here, feel free to explore our dedicated articles on charge routers in our support library. Now, before we move on to the next topics, one important thing here. It is important to mention that if you have multiple instructions in this router, the order of these instructions is crucial. The basic rule here is the more specific rules and exceptions should be placed on top of the list here. That way they will be applied with a higher priority. The ordering here is done by dragging and dropping. So for example, let's say that I want all transfers, all charges to be transferred to company folio, but I want the city tax to be paid by the guest. So the city tax here, I'm going to select it with the filter, and the destination will be the booking default folio. Now, the exception here is essentially the city tax, because it will stay in the guest's folio. Because it is an exception, it needs to be dragged and dropped on the top. That way, it will have a higher priority. So, remember that if you have an exceptions, always keep them on top of the list here. So, this is how you create your routers. In a few minutes, we'll be taking a look at those examples here. Now, after you create your router, you will need to link this router to the corresponding company profile or event profile. How does it work? Let's go first and show you how to do that on a company level. So if you want to link a router to a company, as usual, first of all, you need to find that company. Let's say this one here. And you need to navigate yourself to the company contract section of the company. As you probably know, the company contract section helps you to link rates and discount codes to your companies. But now also it allows you to link charge routers to the companies. Essentially, selecting a charge router here is telling the system that for this company, the system should be using this router for the bookings. Now I'm going to select this one. And I'm going to save. So you can either update your existing contract here, or if you don't have a contract, you can use the new button to create a new contract in this company. And that's how it's done. Now I saved it, it is already selected for this company. For events, it is similar, but you have to navigate yourself to the event. So we go to the event search option, you find the desired event, let's say this one here. And in the folios section of the event, you will have this new section called Booking Charge Routing. And with the little pen next to it, you are able to select which router should be applied for this particular event. That way, when you create bookings for this particular event, this router is going to be triggered for those bookings. So, this is how you link your routers. One important note here is, if you have a router on both event and a company level, the bookings will use the event router because essentially it has a higher priority. The priority order is the following. Now, events has the higher priority, then underneath them we have the companies, they are second in priority, and the agents have the lowest priority. Of course, if no router is set at any level, the charges will remain in the booking and they will not be transferred anywhere. So this is how you link your routers. Now, I told you earlier that we'll be taking a look at a few common example routers, and I'll be showing how they function, how they work. So, first of all, again, I'm going to go to the settings, I'm going to open the booking section and booking charge routing. Let's take a look at my first router here. I've called it rate charges transfer to company. In this router, essentially I wanted to transfer just the rate charges, nothing else. So in this case, one particular instruction is needed. Here I have selected only rate charges, and because I wanted to be for them to be transferred to the company folio in the destination, I have selected default company folio. So now let's see how it works. And let's see the result. I'm going to go to the rate and availability screen. I'm going to create a company booking. Let's see this from here. Take a second. Let's open our booking. And now, as you can see, the balance is 0 in our booking. Our default booking folio is empty. There is nothing in it. And the rooms, essentially the room charges and the city tax, is transferred to my company folio. And if I open the company folio, I will see my charges in here. So as you can see, I had the router at the company. Immediately after I created the booking, my charges were routed. So another example I want to take a look at. My second router. In this router, I wanted to transfer, again, the rate charges. I wanted to transfer the rate charges to the company, but I wanted to keep the city tax in the booking folio because the guest is going to pay them. As I showed you the example a little bit earlier, again, one rule stating that the rate charges will be transferred to the default company folio, and a second rule on top, because it's an exception, stating that the city tax should be staying in the booking default folio. Now, for this particular purpose here, I have already created a booking which has the routing done to it. Here is my booking. As you can see here, the rooms were transferred to my company folio, and the city tax remained in my booking folio. And let's see a few more examples. My next example is related to events. And for example, here I have an event router which is stating that I want to transfer again the rate charges to the event folio. As you can see, only rate charges should be transferred to the event folio. But charges from revenue group city tax and food and beverage, because the guest is going to pay those, the food and beverage and the city tax, they will remain at the booking level. They will remain at the booking default folio. Now, let's check the example booking here I have created for this purpose. 92. If I scroll down again, you will see that the rooms were transferred, the room charges were transferred to the event. And in the booking folio, I have my food and beverage, breakfast in this case, and my city tax. So, those were a few common examples. Of course, if you need some help later to creating those, our support you will gladly help you with this. Now, a few important notes for those of you who will be using the routers. First of all, if you are still using the legacy rate and availability screen to create your bookings, keep in mind that if you still use it, it will not use the routers. In order to make sure that the routers will be used when you use this screen and will be triggered, what you need to do is you need to go to the settings again, all settings, again in the booking section, and you need to go to the booking fields setting. From here, you need to scroll down to the charge routing field and tell the system from now on to use auto as a default value. That way, you're making sure that any new booking you create from now on will be using the auto function, which essentially makes sure that the routers are triggered. A few more important notes. Let's just open one other booking. in cases where there is some change in the booking. Let's say the booking gets updated with a different company, or let's say you make some changes in the router, the system will not automatically reroute the charges. In these cases, what you need to do is essentially you need to trigger the so-called rerouting. How does it work? You open the desired booking, let's say this particular booking here. You scroll down a little bit to the rates and folios section, and in here you'll see a button called reroute charges. So what does it do? Essentially, if you use this option, the system will check for any changes in the booking or in the router, and if needed, it will undo the initial routing and it will repeat it correctly. So yeah, if you have cases where the booking is updated or the router is updated, please make sure that you reroute the charges later. Now, one other thing, if you create new routers, but you already have existing future bookings created before you configure the routers, you will need to update those bookings so they get linked to the router. Now, in my case, this particular booking, as you see, the field called charge routing is set to the previous version option, to the legacy manual transfer version. Now, if I want to make sure that the router will be linked to this booking and it will be routed correctly, what you need to do is you need to edit the booking with the edit button. And in the charge routing field, you need to select auto. After you do that, and after you save the booking, you also need to make sure to use the reroute charges button, so the actual rules from the router are triggered and the charges will be transferred. So essentially, change the charge routing field to auto and click reroute charges. This is what you need to do for all future bookings created before you've configured the routers. A couple more things. I'll just click on the edit button again in this booking to show you one more field. In every booking you will have this manual router option, which by default, of course, is empty. Now, if you have cases where a particular booking, for example, for some reason, it's an exception and it needs to be transferred with a different router, and using a different router, in this booking you can use a manual router. Similar to the manual price option. This is what the idea of this manual router field is. Just keep in mind that if you do a manual transfer of charges, the manual transfer of charges has a higher priority than the router, and the router will not be triggered in cases where you already manually transferred charges. And one more thing. Now, for those of you who have multiple hotels in Clock under one subscription, essentially multiple accounts in Clock for multiple hotels, keep in mind that the router settings and configuration is shared between the accounts, which means that if I create a router in one of the properties, it will immediately be visible and usable in the other properties, so you don't have to create them in the other properties. And also, as I showed you earlier, when you link a router to a certain company, this also is shared between the other properties. So once you link it in one of the properties, it's automatically linked in the other properties too. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. If you have any questions regarding today's topic or you need additional information, assistance, feel free to reach out to our support team. You will also receive a recording of the webinar once the video has been processed. And as usual, please follow our product updates just in case any changes are applied to this new functionality. So, thank you again. Take care.